Hello, I'm Ros Atkins. On today's World Have Your Say, we're going to talk about Trayvon Martin. As many of you know, he was a black teenager killed by a white neighborhood watch officer several weeks ago in Florida. And his case and the issues that it raises continue to generate a huge amount of interest from people around the world. You're talking about what this case tells us about race relations in America. Then there's the issue of the perception of young black men and people who wear hoodies. And then, of course, there are the politicians and whether they're hijacking this case to score their political points. Wherever you're watching, we're live and we're tweeting using the WHYS and the Trayvon hashtags. Okay, let's talk about Trayvon Martin's death and what we're learning about America. I have three guests. They're going to introduce themselves to you. Let's begin in New York.
Yes, hi. I'm Maren Austin. I'm a Columbia University journalism student, getting my master's in journalism.
And from New York to London.
Hello, I'm Elliot. I'm 25 from Southeast London. I'm a founder of an organization called Wake Up. We aim to empower and inspire young people through entrepreneurship and inspiring with creativity.
And from London to Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Danielle Belton. I'm a freelance journalist and blogger. I run the site blacksnob.com.
Well, all three of you, very good to have you live on the BBC's World Have Your Say. Maren, let me start with you in New York. What is this case telling the world about your country?
That's a tough question. I think first and foremost, we have to look at the fact that everyone has taken a side with this immediately. Even our president, President Obama said last week on national television, if he had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin. So that, I think, says it all. Everyone has their stance on this, and I think it's so early to really tell. I mean, this all just happened a couple of weeks ago. There's been no investigation. We really don't know exactly what happened. And I think it's too early for everyone to wear hoodies and show support and to take all these stances. It's really too early to do that. And I think the media hype, on a side note, is just, it's crazy. Politicians are eating this up. The media is eating this up. Everyone seems to be kind of jumping on the bandwagon, taking their stance. And it seems to me too early to do that.
I feel like in this case, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I feel like in this case, there really wasn't much of a choice on behalf of the parents. It took them 3 days to find out their son was lying dead in a morgue. They had to galvanize public support because the police were not interested in investigating the case of their son's death. Zimmerman admitted to killing Trayvon. He claimed that it was self-defense. And the police just basically took him at his word for it, which is disturbing to say the least, that a public citizen who's essentially just acting as his own personal private police force, he's not an officer, engaged this young man based on his own suspicions and then shot an innocent, unarmed teenager. I mean, he wasn't doing anything. And then claimed that it was self-defense. And the real debate is whether you can start a fight with somebody and then choose to end that fight by killing a man.
And
the fact that the police there was no interest in investigating it.
We really don't know what happened. All these tiny.
Well, that's why the police should have arrested Zimmerman and gone through due process. That's why we have a justice system. It's not the police's job to determine whether or not someone did self-defense. That's the job of the district attorney. It's the job of the courts. And there's already news out of the DA's office out of Florida that there were those individuals in the office that wanted to prosecute Zimmerman. They were concerned that there were issues with his case. It was issues with his story.
So you're saying that we shouldn't support what's happened. We shouldn't support the family. That could have been me. That could have been anyone. I don't get what you're saying. It's too early. What do you mean?
Say that one more time.
You're saying it's too early to take a stand. A young black boy has been shot dead by another guy, and you're saying we should wait and do what?
Well, I mean, how can we honestly say, this just happened a couple of weeks ago. You know, how can we honestly say, this is like, look at the Casey Anthony trial, for example. I mean, yes, people took a stance on that early, saying, justice for Kaylee, but the truth of the matter is the case ended, and we still really don't know exactly what happened with a lot of these cases. And I think to take a stance, to me, I mean, I come from a journalism background, so I'm thinking in my head, if I ever wrote a story about this and I said, well, if I had a son or if I had a dad or a brother, he would look just like Trayvon Martin. I thought to myself, that's our president and of this country, and the fact that he's coming out and saying that, he's taken such a side. We really don't know exactly what happened.
How is that statement offensive? I mean, he just said that the kid would, if he had a son, it would possibly look like Trayvon. I mean, how is that an offensive statement?
It shows his empathy with Trayvon Martin, and that's fine.
Oh,
and
you don't empathize with an unarmed kid who was shot by a vigilante? You don't emphasize with a family?
I do. I really do, but I don't just believe what everybody tells me. I want to know exactly what happened. I want there to be a trial, and I do agree with you. You said earlier.
And who do you trust to give us them fair, real life version of what actually happened? Because I don't trust that the reality of what's going to happen, of what happened, is going to come out to light. So whilst you're saying wait until we find out all the facts are going to be from someone's point of view, because Trayvon's dead. So in the meantime, we've got to do what we've got to do.
And the real issue is here is that the police didn't investigate it. I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this right now if the police department had done their job.
Exactly.
We also wouldn't be talking about this if the media didn't absolutely blow this up and it wasn't in every newspaper and every local newscast, at least in the United States.
But why is it in the media? It's in the media because the police didn't do their job. That's really all that it is. If the police had done their job and they actually investigated, arrested Zimmerman, and let the courts decide what happened that night, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. We wouldn't.
Okay, but let's say this. There's also African American and shooters all the time who will shoot, an African American will shoot another African American, and the police don't investigate it, and the media doesn't care. Or a white person who shoots a white person. It's this racial tension, and that's a whole.
The only reason why this is an issue is because he was acting as a vigilante and shot an unarmed kid in the street. It's a very different case from when you have just criminal activity where you have people shooting other people. The police normally do investigate. Now, there are times where they can't find who the shooter is. There have been cases where no one's ever been found to shot somebody. It's very different for the police to know someone was murdered. The person admitted they murdered that person and just refused to investigate it. That's why this case is a story. That's why it's such a big issue.
Can I ask all three of you, it's fascinating listening to you talk, do you think that all of our reactions to this case are defined by our racial background? Is that the way it's working, that we're reacting to the case according to our backgrounds? Elliot, what's your view?
It certainly has an influence in how you perceive it. I can relate. I'm young, I'm black, I've got a hoodie on right now. That could be me walking in Chelsea and someone does the same thing. So obviously I can see it from that perspective. I can't speak from a white lady's perspective or an Asian person's perspective when you're viewing it down racial lines. So yeah, it does play a part in how we see it. And to say it doesn't, I think is a lie, because your cultural identity and who you are is made up partly of where you come from and what color you are.
I feel like this is really about the rule of law. I feel like anybody can identify with this case, considering that you want the police to investigate if something bad happens to you. If you or your child is harmed by someone and they admit that they did it, you at least hope that the police would do due diligence and find out what happened, and you'd hope that our government, our justice system would prosecute. And so that's why I feel like even though I do emphasize, because the fact that I am African American and people that I've loved have been victims of racial profiling, I've had to deal with discrimination in the past. I really feel like this goes beyond color, because this is our justice system we're talking about here. If people can't have faith in the rule of law, that the police are here to protect you, our system is fragile.
I agree with you, but my question is that really what people are talking about, especially in the United States? It seems like a lot of people have taken this to a racial level, racial profiling. Look at someone wearing a hoodie. You know, I'm going to look at them and say, oh, they must be bad news, or they must be someone bad. And that's what I think that the discussion, you know, on Twitter and on Facebook and all over the media, that's what it's come to. And I do agree with you. I think it is about the justice system. And you're right. If your son is killed or someone in your family is killed, you want the police to investigate it. You want the justice system to handle it in a right and fair way. But is that what people are really talking about? I don't know. You know, if you look,
I feel like they're talking about both. I mean, People have been very hard on what's going on in Florida. That's why you have the DOJ, the Department of Justice, getting involved. That's why you have so many people talking about it. That's why you have the protests, because people do want the justice system to recognize this. The reason why the race component is talked about is because you can't really ignore that. Racial profiling is obviously a part of this discussion here. I mean, on the 911 tapes, Zimmerman points out that Trayvon is African American, and that's part of the reason why he's concerned, because he's already called the police more than 40 times in this neighborhood with concerns about crime and talking about African Americans in relation to crime. And there is a perception in this country that when people see an African American male, they feel threatened, whether he's doing anything or not. And so that's racial profiling is a part of the discussion. We need to discuss it.
Well, all three of you, let me just interrupt you because we're coming up to a break. If you're watching the three of them talking from London, Washington, D.C. and New York and would like to join in, we're live, you can do. The number to call is country code 44 2070 83 72 72. I can see a couple of comments have just come in. Alice in Florida posting on our Facebook page, as a native of Florida with a concealed weapons permit, I would gladly lose the stand your ground law if it would keep this from happening again. And Ajit, also at facebook.com/World Have Your Say, says, let the law deal with it and stop playing the race card. And there are a couple of bits of context I would add. A grand jury is considering whether to charge George Zimmerman, the man who is accused of shooting Trayvon Martin dead. That will be heard on the 10th of April. And also the father of George Zimmerman has come out and said his son was attacked and had his nose broken before he retaliated. So there are different narratives about what happened, but as several of our guests have already pointed out, we just don't know. Now we're going to take a break for just a couple of moments and then we'll come back here live on BBC World News. Let's go straight over to Jill McGivering, who is with the World Have Your Say team in central London. Jill, give us an idea of the reaction we've had so far.
Well, Ross, since we've been on air in the last few minutes, calls from Ghana, Canada, Morocco and Australia, to name just a few. And it's clear this is a topic people do feel very passionate about. They're using words like shameful and despicable to talk about this death. And some people say they see this as a sign of something much more, that they see it as further evidence in their eyes that the US is racist. Skin colour shouldn't matter, they say, but there's no doubt it does. But some people also say, look, it's a positive thing there's so much discussion, and a lot of people picking up on the comments of your guest saying it's just too early, hold off, don't jump to conclusions yet until we know the facts.
Jill, thank you very much indeed. Well, if you want to speak to any of our guests, Danielle in Washington, D.C., Elliot in London, Marion live from New York, you can send them an email now, worldhaveyourSay@bbc.com. Put your phone number if you'd like us to get you on the air and have you speaking to them live. We'll get back to the conversation in a moment. Hi, I'm Ross Atkins. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. We're discussing the death of Trayvon Martin in Florida several weeks ago. Most of you will need no introduction to his case. He was a black teenager, unarmed, and he was allegedly shot dead by a neighborhood watch volunteer who is white, and so far he has not been charged with any crime. And as I'm sure you know, the issues that this has thrown up has grown and grown and grown. Well, Elliot in London's been with us. We've also got Danielle in Washington, D.C., Marin in New York. Now, let's switch to another guest who's joining us live from Toronto. Thank you very much for your time. Could you introduce yourself to all of us watching?
Absolutely. I'm Andrew Lawton. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Landmark Report, and I'm here from the lovely land of Canada with you today.
Well, thank you for joining us live on the BBC. What's your view from the top of North America about what's happening in the country below you?
Well, first off, I wanted to correct the misinformation you just gave your viewers. The man Zimmerman is actually Hispanic, not white. I recognize that doesn't play into the media narrative about this, because the media is trying to make this about a racist attack by a person and ignoring the facts at hand here. And I find that unlike most people in the mainstream media, I'm actually prepared to admit that I don't know the details of this case, but I wish people would stop trying to turn this into something it's not, which is some sort of race-based attack that took place in Florida.
Danielle, do you feel like you're perhaps turning it into something that we just don't know happened?
I Once again, I have to go back to the fact that this wouldn't be in the news if it weren't for the fact that the police refused to investigate the case.
Well, no,
we wouldn't have the media. We wouldn't have the media investigating it if the police had done their job. It's not the media.
Listening to what you said earlier on, you were saying that the problem with this case was that they didn't investigate here. The fact is, whether or not you like it or not, innocent until proven guilty. They can't just assume that the man is a murderer. They have to go through due process.
They also can't assume that he's innocent. There is evidence of them trying to coerce witnesses.
Guilty. I don't know why you're trying to deceive people.
You're innocent until proven guilty, and that's the
true.
whole point I was trying to make earlier. We don't know what happened, and that's the bottom line. And you can say the details. We should, and that's what I'm saying.
So the police should ignore witnesses that corroborate who say that it was Zimmerman who attacked Trayvon. We should ignore the 911 tapes where the operator tells him not to get out the car and follow the kid. So we should ignore the fact that innocent kids dead.
Ignoring evidence. Are you saying that we should ignore the fact that?
How do you know that he's an innocent kid? Is my question. You say, oh, ignore the fact that an innocent kid is dead. It's a shame.
He was walking to his father's girlfriend's house. What was he actually doing?
Okay, but it doesn't mean that he's innocent. We don't know anything about this kid.
What could he have done? What do you think someone does to deserve to die walking home late at night?
All three of you, just hold on a moment. Just hold on a moment, because if you all talk at the same time, it's quite hard to hear any of you. But I am interested in this. Do you think, Marin, that we know he was unarmed? There will be some people watching this program thinking whatever he had done, he didn't deserve to be shot dead by a neighborhood watch officer. Are you saying there are some circumstances in which an unarmed man can justifiably be killed?
If someone is attacking you, you have to defend yourself in whatever way you can. And if someone's attacking you, you don't know if they're going to bring out any weapons. You don't know that. And if you have a gun with you, which is perfectly legal where this took place, and you can use that to defend yourself, I don't see a problem with that. My heart goes out to the family of Trayvon Martin because they lost someone in their family. But despite what the media says, this isn't some innocent kid that was shot in cold blood. This is a guy who's made repeated threats, allegations to criminal activity on his Twitter page, which for some reason his family wanted to take down. Do you think they're hiding something there?
Allegations on Twitter.
Well, we don't know.
Have you been 17 before? You've never been 17.
I have been. Funny, I was not talking.
All I'm saying is, you're right. You know what?
On Twitter, okay? Look at his Twitter feed, for crying out loud. Seriously, I mean, they were talking earlier about how we all talk.
So if I, as a 17-year-old kid, quoted rap lyrics on Twitter, I deserve to die walking home.
No, you don't. Nobody deserves to die, but we don't.
What's going to happen back to you?
And I would like to, I'm going to jump in. And I want to jump in here. Danielle, hold your thought, because Marin, I haven't heard you answer my question yet. Are there some circumstances in which an unarmed man or teenager deserves to die or can justifiably be killed? Because some of our viewers are saying it doesn't matter what he did. He didn't have a gun. You shouldn't be able to shoot him dead.
If you
Andrew, hold your fire. I keep asking Marin a question and you keep answering.
Don't interrupt me. No, I'm kidding. But the truth is he said earlier, no one wears a sign on their forehead that says, you know, I'm not carrying a gun with me. You don't know, and we don't know what happened. We don't know if there was some sort of verbal attack, some sort of fight. We don't know if there's some sort of history between these two people. There's so much information that we don't know, and I think and I'm not taking either side. I'm not saying, you know, an innocent child deserves to die, and I'm not saying that he should. I'm not saying any of this. All I'm saying is I don't know.
Okay.
And I think for people to say, you know, there's no way, no one deserves to die, and I should say that. But for people to say, you know, there's no way a 17-year-old, oh, have you ever been 17 before? There's no way a 17-year-old could ever, you know, do this or that. You know what? I have been 17 before, and I have been in high school, and I do know what happens. I do know what 17-year-olds do, and sometimes they're just as bad, if not worse, than adults.
Let me read you some of the. Let me read you some of the comments that we've been getting. Kasim on Twitter says, if Trayvon Martin had been the shooter, by now he'd be in jail, and I'll get you to respond to that in a moment. I also want to read you this message from Michael Skolnick. He's the editor of globalgrind.com, and we wanted to pull you up this message, which you can see, commenting about white people. You will never look suspicious like Trayvon Martin. I will never look suspicious to you. Do you think that's true, Andrew, that the reality is that at the moment Americans see black young men as more suspicious than white young men?
Look, I don't know about whatever prejudices individual people may or may not have, but the fact is this event is getting so much more coverage than similar instances that have happened with white people, and the only reason seems to be because of the color of Trayvon's skin. So when you hear this narrative that allegedly no one cared about this case because he was black, I think that's completely untrue. I mean, when was the last time that an individual instance where a kid ended up dead got coverage at a national press conference by the president? I mean, that's unheard of. And as for Obama's comment that if he had a son, he would look like Trayvon, I don't know what they're trying to play here, but the fact is this should not be a national news story. It's tragic, but this is only a news story because the media is trying to accomplish an agenda with this.
And Elliot's come back into the conversation. He lives in southeast London, as do I, in fact. And I'm just curious, Elliot, if you're walking around, do you think that people view you as being more suspicious than a white guy the same age as you?
Certainly. I get stopped and searched more often than most people my age. I'm 25, I don't even look 25, but most people around my age group, black people in southeast London, in all of London, is going to get stopped and searched by the police more often than white boys, than Asian boys. So obviously we look suspicious for something. What are we supposed to wear?
But some people would argue you look at the crime figures and young black men are disproportionately represented, and so it's reasonable for the police to disproportionately stop you.
Yeah, I can understand that, but that doesn't change the fact that stop and search, how effective is stop and search in stopping crime? How effective has it been? Because last time I've been stopped stupid amount of times, and I haven't committed no crimes, and they haven't stopped me from doing any crimes.
So you say you are targeted. Danielle, as a young woman in Washington, D.C., do you think you arouse more suspicion than a white woman, or is this about men specifically?
I think this is really more about African-American men. I mean, as a woman, I would argue that, I mean, most people are not threatened by women regardless of race. It has to do a lot with how we perceive gender and who we perceive as the aggressors related to our genders. So as an African-American woman, I have not experienced anything where I felt anyone was ever necessarily threatened by me. I mean, I'm only 5'3".
Here's another comment for us to hear your reactions to. Reverend C.L. Bryant said in an interview in the Daily Caller, his family should be outraged at the fact that Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton are using this child as the bait to inflame racial passions. The epidemic is truly black-on-black crime. Why is there no outrage about that? Elliot, Danielle, would you respond to that?
That's another issue that our own community here need to take a more standing role on, because that is one thing that I would say. When black boys kill black boys, there ain't no marches going on. So when white people kill us, what is that when we want to shout about it? What's going to happen 2 months, 3 months down the line? Guarantee you someone's going to get killed black by a black person, and what's going to happen? So that is he has a point there.
Danielle?
I actually feel like cases like this tend to actually not get that much media attention regardless of who killed whom. I mean, the only reason why this is getting so much attention is because of the fact that a man has admitted to killing the kid and he wasn't arrested, and that the people feel the case was poorly investigated by the police. That's been the real push, because it's not a rare thing where you have someone kill another person, whether it's an African-American killing another African-American. And even growing up in my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, there were stories of either blacks being killed by whites or whites being killed by blacks. It didn't become national news. The thing that made this national was the fact that people felt there was a miscarriage of justice taking place.
Danielle, Andrew, Elliot, Marion, it's been very, very interesting listening to you talk. Thank you very much for joining us live here on World Have Your Say. Thomas in the US is watching and saying, this isn't about race, it's about class. Well, you can carry on the conversation on Facebook. We'll be back in a couple of minutes' time.